All right, Howard Beck is here, contributor, GQ Sports contributor, the Locked On Podcast Network. I want to welcome in everybody listening to this show on AMP. A reminder to subscribe to my feed on AMP at Chris Mannix. Subscribe to the volume on AMP as well. To those listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube, welcome. Howard, we are just a day away from Game 3 of the NBA Finals, and suddenly we have a series again. If you had asked me after Game 1 how long this series was going to go, I would say 4, maybe 5 games. Nuggets just looked too good in Game 1. Miami looked like their luck had run out. And then Game 2 comes along, and for what has been the 4th consecutive series, it seems like Miami just wants it more, or at least Game 2 they wanted more than Denver. Series now tied at 1, headed back to South Beach. Did Miami's win in Game 2 change your view of this series?
No, because I'm not surprised, and because I didn't understand the Chris Mannixes of the world who, failing to learn any lessons of this postseason or even prior postseasons, decided to overreact to one game. It was one game. I was shocked at the number of people who were immediately leaping to it's going to be a sweep. The Heat have no chance. They don't have size. They don't have the shooting.
I never called for a sweep. Just to be clear, I never said a sweep. I picked Denver to win in 6, and I stuck by that. But I did feel like Miami was going up against the team and a player in Nikola Jokic that wasn't going to be fooled by a lot of the junk that they threw at him. So that was where my kind of aggressive approach to Game 1's result came from.
Sure. And listen, I was as impressed by the way the Nuggets dominated that game as anyone. And I certainly sat back and thought, wow, this is really going to be an uphill climb for Miami. But there were, maybe not you, but a lot of people jumping to it's going to be a sweep and no more than 5 at that stage. The fact is, like, all of these series, they're like organic beings, and they shape shift, right? Every game is its own entity, and you can never judge that much. And we have seen this in the past. We have seen NBA Finals where there was one with the Spurs and Heat. Can't remember if it was the first one or the second one, where I think we went 3 straight games where one team won by at least 20, then the other team won by 20, then the other team went back to winning by 20. And each time you think, well, that's it. It's solved. It's never solved. And it's not just the tactical chess match, right, where they are trying to solve some things of each other's attack. It's also just the fact that these are humans playing. You don't have the same intensity level every time. Your shot may not be on every time. The moment maybe gets to you a little differently. And I also think, look, probably unprovable things, but probably the Miami Heat were a little gassed in Game 1, coming straight off of a Game 7. Probably they're still adjusting to the elevation at that point, and maybe by Game 2 they had been able to settle in, and that had something to do with it too. The move to Kevin Love in the starting lineup certainly seemed to open some things up for them. Acclimating to Jokic and the way he orchestrates is defending a team built around him is not like anything else the Heat had seen. So I think it's just a little bit of all of that. Now, 1-1 going to Miami, now you start to think about, okay, well, are the Heat truly the driver's seat? Is this going to be another split? Are they going back to Denver as a 2-2 tie? Like, I'm not sure where it goes from here. I'm just saying, I'm not surprised that Miami has made this a series and that they weren't going to just suddenly roll over.
So let's talk about the adjustment Miami made in Game 2. And that was in part to make Nikola Jokic a scorer. I know Erik Spoelstra vehemently denied that or kind of downplayed that. And by the way, the people that were jumping up and down on Erik Spoelstra for his reaction to Ramona Shelburne's comment, just relax, okay? Ramona went on TV and said Spoelstra texted to apologize. He was not directing his ire at her necessarily. But the reality is that's exactly what Miami did. Steve Kerr commented on it on Draymond Green's podcast after the game, where he said, yeah, they made Nikola Jokic a scorer. And historically, that's worked out. Last year against Golden State, that's what the Warriors did. And it worked out for them in that series. Look at some of the numbers. 7-13, the Nuggets were in the regular season in games where Jokic had fewer than 8 assists. How Jokic beats you is in a variety of different ways. He's a Swiss Army knife out there offensively, offensive rebounding, passing, playmaking, and scoring. When he's limited, and that maybe is the wrong choice of word, but when he is put into a lane of just a scorer and you're able to focus and slow down the rest of them, you give yourself a better chance to win. That's for sure. What did you make of that adjustment? And did you see what kind of everyone else sort of saw, that Jokic was put in a situation where he had to put up points rather than distribute the ball as much?
Yeah. And it's funny too, right? Because the way Spoelstra dismissed it was to say, that's basically like people who don't, I can't remember what his exact phrasing was, essentially that you don't understand basketball.
Untrained eye.
I was speaking with somebody today who has been in basketball literally his entire life, entire career, who works for another NBA team, who was saying, I was surprised to hear Spoelstra say that, because to my trained eye, that is exactly what was happening. He's like, I was wondering, is my eye not that trained? And this is somebody who's a longtime basketball executive and talent assessor in the league, who saw exactly that. And I said, I was asking him, is there something to this idea too? Just that, the Nuggets are at their best when these guys are all in rhythm and they're all attacking you. And now you have to worry about all five of them. And when you can kind of blanket, stay home on the shooters, stay home on everybody else, and make it just about Jokic scoring, it kind of simplifies things a little bit. And now Jokic still scored at a very high level, a high efficiency level. It was 16
high
of
efficiency
28,
level,
right?
Yeah. High efficiency level.
16 of 28. Like, one person scores that way in an entire game, and you may well lose because of the accuracy of his
7 for 8 from the free throw line too. I think he had 11 rebounds. Like, he was all over the place, just not with the passing.
And look, to Spoelstra's point on some level, what the Nuggets were doing was still working, going through Jokic and maybe having him as their primary scorer, because they had a 7-point lead going into the fourth, and Jokic had 31 points. And at that point, if the game ends after 3 quarters, you'd say, well, letting him be a scorer or turning him into a scorer. And it wasn't really so much letting him, right? Like, I think some people are offended by that too. And I think part of what Spoelstra was doing was guarding against the idea that was going to become bulletin board material, or that, the Heat now believe they can just let him score. It's not so much letting him, obviously. It is more about, where do you focus your defense? Somebody is going to score at a decent clip. But if you hold down the role players, you give yourself a little bit better chance to defend overall. But I also think this, role players and everybody on that team, essentially, Jamal Murray's like a very high level role player, right? Like borderline all-star, but not. Role players need to be in a rhythm. They need to feel involved. And a team like the Nuggets that doesn't defend at a high level, and that's not their calling card, guys sometimes sag when they're not getting touches. Michael Porter Jr. has a reputation in his entire career for being a guy who, if he's not engaged offensively, not getting his touches and his shots, might not be so engaged defensively. I think it throws guys off of their rhythm, and it can pull a team down a little bit. Now, they still were right in it. They still, had a chance to win this game. They still had a chance to tie it on the final possession, and we might be having a different conversation. But I certainly understand why the Heat, kind of focused it the way they did defensively to try to take away some of the role players. And I look, to the extent that they won the game, I guess it worked. To JJ Redick's point, because he had a phenomenal 3-minute rant about this on his podcast yesterday. There's a lot that the Nuggets just simply screwed up defensively in the fourth quarter. And if they make those defensive plays, we're probably not having this conversation quite at this level.
No, they entered the fourth quarter with an 8-point lead. You shouldn't blow an 8-point lead in a finals game in the fourth quarter. I thought the Nuggets got a little comeuppance. I thought they played with a nonchalance that I got familiar seeing in the last round with Boston. I don't think Boston took Miami as seriously as they should, especially in those early games. And I think Denver in game 2 didn't take Miami as seriously as they should. They got sloppy. They committed turnovers. They took bad shots. And Miami, as they've done all playoffs long, took advantage of it. They made the plays in that fourth quarter. In situations like this, Howard, I like to play the game of who would you rather be, right? We got a 1-1 series at the moment. Best of 5, Miami right now with home court. My head says Denver should still be considered the favorite here, because on paper, the Nuggets are the more naturally talented team. But when I look at Miami, you have had Caleb Martin, one of the stars of the Eastern Conference playoffs, who has not had a good game in this series, was dog sick in game 2, and that made him ineffective. That was one of the reasons I think we saw Kevin Love in the starting lineup. Jimmy Butler has played pretty well, both ends of the floor, but he has not had a Jimmy Butler game. And you got to believe that's coming at some point in this series. So while on paper, I want to say, look, the Nuggets, even though they lost, you still got to believe in them. They got Jokic. They got more overall talent. I look at Miami and say they're right in this. And a lot of their guys, or at least a few of their guys, haven't played well yet. How do you see it?
Well, and I would point out too, and I should have mentioned this in the opening segment there, just the Heat shot terribly from 3 in game 1, way below their usual percentage, their capabilities. So you knew they were probably going to bounce back there. And of course they did in game 2. Mm-hmm. Shooters and role players are generally more comfortable at home. The next 2 games are in Miami. So if there's going to be a Caleb Martin game, that might well be game 3 or 4. Maybe we'll have a throwback Kyle Lowry scoring performance, or Kevin Love, Strus, Vincent, whoever. I do think we're going to probably see the best of the Heat offensively. And that's really, the difficulty for the Heat in general is, that they're going to play their butts off defensively. They're going to be really committed and disciplined, but then offensively, they sometimes have problems generating great shots, especially in the half court. But when the shooters are on, when the shots are falling from 3-point range, it gets really difficult to deal with them. And again, back to the whole make Jokic a scorer thing. Well, that generally means that Jokic is kind of like driving down the teeth of your defense, and he's scoring 2s. And if you're scoring 3s, you might just get the math in your favor. I'm interested to see this aspect of it. The Nuggets really weren't pushed around at all in those first 3 rounds, right? Like they had some moments, like, and they earned this, right? I'm not doing the asterisk thing by any stretch, but you earn it by being the top seed. You get to roll the Minnesota Timberwolves in the first round. You get to beat a broken down Suns team with no depth whatsoever, and Kevin Durant, wheezing, playing 48 minutes. And so then they get to the Lakers and they sweep the Lakers. They earned all that, but I'm just saying we haven't really seen the adversity and the need to really kind of like take a step back and assess and show kind of the mental toughness that it takes. And that Michael Malone himself has said is a concern sometimes for this team. So 1-1, you've lost home court advantage. You're going into Miami for the next couple of games. I'm very interested just to see the Nuggets' ability to kind of steady themselves and show that mental toughness and win this, right? Like it's not all just like the tactical matchups and everything else. It's like you've got to push your way through this, and it's tough. And like the Heat, this whole core has been in the finals before a couple of years ago. And we've already seen like nothing bothers these guys. They can be up 3-0, lose 3 in a row, be on the verge of being the first team in NBA history to blow a 3-0 lead. And they're like, no, we're fine. We got this. And they did. And quite easily. Do the Nuggets have that same kind of toughness? We're going to find out.
Yeah, 3 guys in Denver are on Denver that I think this next game 3 is huge for. And you start at the top. For Michael Malone, it's a big test because you've now seen what Miami's going to throw at you. You've now seen some of the defenses they're going to throw at you. They're going to try to make Jokic a scorer, I'm sure, again in game 3. How do you counter that? How do you get all your other guys involved while still taking what the defense gives you? So a big moment, I think, for Michael Malone, who's had a couple of days now to kind of digest the tape and figure out what to do next. Michael Porter Jr., not played well. Has shot the ball extremely poorly in both games of this series. Kind of avoided criticism, skirted criticism in game 1, in part because Denver won, in part because he rebounded particularly well, also played some decent defense, but he did none of those things in game 2, and that was a problem for the Nuggets. They need him to be a top-level third option. He's getting paid that way. They need him to be that top-level third option to be effective offensively. And Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who was dreadful in game 2, like 1 for 4 from the field, didn't get anything done offensively. Defensively, he was getting beat all over the floor. And when he wasn't getting beat, he was complaining. Like he was among several Nuggets that spent most of the second half complaining to the referees about calls. And I understand the referees blew some calls in that second half, but every single time you can't look at the referee and have this exasperated look on your face, especially when you got it wrong, right? Like there was one sequence in the fourth quarter where Kentavious Caldwell-Pope just landed underneath Kyle Lowry when he was taking a 3. Easy call for the referee to make. And Caldwell-Pope is on the ground kind of looking at the ref going, what did I do? What did I do? Well, pretty obvious what you did there. You can't do that in today's NBA. So Michael Malone, his adjustments. Michael Porter Jr., his ability to score and score efficiently. And Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, being a top flight defensive player on Butler, on Max Strus, on Duncan Robinson, whoever he winds up matched up with in this game, those three guys need to perform at a high level for Denver to win game 3.
Yeah, I agree. I also think, to the extent that the counter move might be to try to free some of those guys up, right? Like if the Heat are going to be, all out effort, making an all out effort to blanket those guys or stay home on the shooters, all this, can you get a little bit more movement in there or get out and transition more? And I know like the Heat's a good transition defensive team, but you're going to need to find a way to get those guys, I think, some early shots. Like look at how incredibly dynamic and explosive the Nuggets appeared in game 1 when Jokic had like, what was it, like 6 to 7 assists in the first quarter or whatever it was, didn't take a shot till like the final seconds of the first quarter. They look unbeatable when he is just flinging the ball around and hitting guys. Can you unlock that early and get those guys going and get their confidence going? I think the way they start game 3 is just absolutely huge because you know they're sitting there and it's the big gap between games 2 and 3 because when you switch cities, they take the double time off. That's a long time to sit there stewing over what just happened.
Yeah. And if there's a lesson to be learned, take Miami seriously. Those that don't have paid the price in these playoffs. All right. Follow Howard Beck on Twitter at Howard Beck. Read all his stuff over at GQ Sports. Listen to him on the Locked On Sports Podcast Network. Howard, always good to catch up, man.
Always a pleasure, my friend.